How can I maintain speed and agility as I get older? I love this question, especially because I am getting older. I'm 31 years old. I'm dealing with a new knee injury. I have past ACL tear injuries, one of which I never got repaired. So, this is an awesome question because speed is absolutely critical to your performance as you get older, especially as vertical jump ability starts to become less and less of a uh, determining factor in like how well you're going to play on the court. Your speed becomes more and more of a determining factor along with your actual health, right? So I love this question, and I really just want to dive into this. I'm basically going to talk about the what, right? The things that you can actually do to help you get faster, and that's both with like linear speed as well as agility, change of direction speed. And then I also want to talk about the how, like how you actually do that. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So first, on the what side of things, I think there's five main areas I want to hit on, and there's certainly more, but the five main ones I want to hit on are: number one, actually sprinting, so doing sprint speed work. Number two is going to be within your skill work. I'm going to put that as a separate category. And then doing plyometrics, jumping, and traditional strength training. So let's start out on the sprinting side, on the speed work side. So we can categorize sprinting and speed work in general into basically like three subcategories. There's acceleration, there's top speed, and there is multi-directional speed. And it's important that you attack all of those in your training. When you're doing your speed training, you want to spend time working on acceleration, just short distance sprints, anything that's like 0 to 15, maybe 20 yards, depending on how you define that. Top speed sprint work, which would be anything that's over 20 yards. And then, multi-directional speed, which is going to incorporate change of direction. And then, change of direction, there's true agility, which is reactive, right? Some type of stimulus, somebody attacks to me from the left side, so I need to cut to my right, or I need to attack to my right. That's true agility, where you have to read a situation and analyze. Whereas change of direction is purely like it's more pre-planned, something like a lane agility drill or an X drill or something where you already know where you're going to be changing direction. And then within that multi-directional speed, I would also put deceleration in that category. So when you're doing your speed training, three things you really want to attack is acceleration, top speed, and multi-directional speed. The next category when it comes to maintaining and really improving your speed and agility as you get older is going to be within your skill work. And let's put that as its own separate category. When you do your skill work, that's going to be like your shooting, your ball handling, and your finishing work. Excuse me. You want to do those things at a game speed that you can actually apply to the game. When I was a manager at Sac State, one of our coaches, Brandon Laird, had this awesome analogy he used to say, which was he would talk about playing at different speeds on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely fast, 1 being extremely slow, right? And generally, what I remember him saying was like, you usually want to play at a 5 to 7 speed, right? That's really where you're going to be the most controlled. And then maybe 8 or 9 speed is where you start to create separation, and that's very short distances where you're creating that separation. And then maybe 1 to 3 is more so where you're playing at a slower pace, maybe to throw the defense off. But then that 5 to 7 is really where you want to live at, because that's where you're under the most control, but you can still move fast. So when you're doing your skill work, view that somewhat through the lens of speed and agility training, because if you cannot play fast with the ball, then you're not really an offensive threat, at least not under control. And you can't create for yourself and for others. So it's important that you spend time training at different speeds: 5 to 7 speed, 8 to 9 speed, even a 10 speed, and then maybe like a 1 to 4 speed, somewhere in that range. The next category I want to hit on is plyometrics. So on the plyometrics, without going into extreme detail, you have what a lot of people categorize as like extensive and intensive plyometrics. Extensive would be like at a jump rope intensity, right? I'm not jumping off super high off the ground, but I'm getting a really quick ground contact times. And as soon as I hit the ground, I basically bounce right off. That trains something called the stretch shortening cycle, a really important reactive quality. Reactivity is basically like how well you bounce off the ground without sinking into it, right? So extensive plyometrics are a really good way to establish your base when it comes to reactivity. Intensive would be, to keep it simple, maybe it's doing something like really high jump ropes. Maybe you jump up really high on each jump, but you still get off the ground really quickly on each rep. And this is like an oversimplified example, but I think it illustrates the point of plyometrics. We can view them as extensive and intensive. Now, I really like the Matt McKinnis Watson plyometric system, where he has different tiers to the plyometrics: low, mid, ping, and deep. And if you're interested in reading more about those, he has tremendous articles on Simply Faster. His Instagram is a great resource as well, and so is his YouTube. So you can look into that more if you'd like, or you can ask me any questions that you have, and I can share with you how I use his plyometric system. But at the end of the day, doing plyometrics is going to help you be more reactive. You're going to be able to produce more force more quickly, and you're going to be able to do it without as much muscle energy and using more tendon elasticity to help you create that energy and force, and therefore help you be faster at the end of the day. And then, sprinting is also part of that, but I talked about that a little earlier. The next thing that you want to do when it comes to maintaining your speed and agility as you get older, I think, is doing actual jump training. At the end of the day, speed is a function of force, or impulse, which is force that you apply into the ground, and that's going to propel you forward. Jump training does basically the same thing. When you jump, you are putting force into the ground, and then the ground is giving you some of that force back, and that's propelling you up in the air. So it's doing the same thing at the end of the day, of training your ability to put a lot of force into the ground and create large impulses. It's just doing it in a different direction, or that's also called a vector. Jumping is more up, sprinting is more horizontal. So, but it's still a really highly transferable skill to speed and agility training. So, doing jumping, and that could be anything. It could be stuff like box jumps. It could be weighted jumps. It could be on a Vertimax. If you have a Vertimax, it could be a ton of different things. But at the end of the day, I think just if you're on a court, practice dunking or practice jumping really high on your layups until you're at a place where you can grab rim. And then you can start to dunk a tennis ball, and then a volleyball, and then a basketball, and so forth. But doing jump training is going to help you be really good at producing a lot of force fast and applying it into the ground, so that way you can move either vertically or horizontally. The final thing that I want to hit on when it comes to speed training, or to being fast and agile as we get older, is just traditional strength training. It doesn't need to be any crazy fancy exercises you may see. It doesn't have to be anything on a Bosu ball. It certainly can, but it doesn't need to be. It could just be really simple, functional, quote unquote, functional movements. Things like a squat, a hinge, a push, and a pull. The ability to produce force and apply it into the ground is something that is always going to transfer over to sprint training, indirectly and directly. So that's the what. That's an overview of what the what when it comes to how we continue to be fast and agile as we get older, or how to get faster and more agile as we get older. Now, I want to talk very briefly about the how. How do we actually do this and apply this into our training? Because as we get older, our time becomes more limited. We start to gain more responsibilities in our life, and you can maybe attest to this if you're even younger than I am at 31. But I know I have more responsibilities now that I have to uphold. And as a result, I need my training to be really efficient. I love training, but I'm not trying to be there all day. I'm trying to get in and out 45, 60 minutes, maybe 75 at the most. And I got to get on with the rest of my day. So how do we apply this? On the sprint side, I think start with something before you start doing top speed sprinting. It's important that your body is prepared for it. So do something like short distance acceleration focused sprints. For example, do some 10-yard sprints 5 times and take a 1 minute to 2 minute break in between each reps. It's sprint training. It's about being really fast So we take long rest periods because it's not about conditioning or my endurance. I'm focused on my speed. So I need to be rested on each rep so I can have maximal output. So 5 reps of 10-yard sprints and take a 1 to 2 minute break in between each sprint. The next thing you can do, and this is more going to be change of direction focus or multi-directional speed, is something like a lane agility drill that they do at the NBA Combine, where there's a box set up around the key, and you sprint, slide, backpedal, slide, and then you do the same thing back, slide, sprint, slide, backpedal. If you play NBA 2K, you're probably very familiar with that if you've done anything like my player. But doing a lane agility drill, maybe doing it 3 times, with a 1 to 2 minute break in between each reps will be a great way to train your multi-directional speed when it comes to change of direction and different movements and deceleration. The next thing on the plyometrics, I very briefly talked about like the plyometric system. Start out with something simple like pogos. Do some low and mid, or low pogos and maybe some high pogos, and do those. Do the low pogos for 15 reps in place, and then do the high pogos for 10 reps in place, and do that 2 to 3 times, and that will suffice for a beginner level plyometric program. On the jumping side, do some standing and approach jumps. Standing could be like you're standing right under the rim and you're jumping up, and if you can't get the rim, then you're reaching as high as you can on the net, or you're reaching as high as you can on the backboard. But that would be like your standing vertical work. And then your approach jumps could just be running to try to dunk the basketball or grab the rim with 1 or 2 hands. And no matter how you prefer to jump, whether it's 1 or 2 foot, I suggest that you do both 1 and 2 foot. But I do suggest that you train both sides, meaning if you prefer to jump off of 2 feet and you prefer to do so with a left foot, then right foot and jump type of gather, do the same thing on the other side, right foot, then left foot. So we've talked about standing and approach verts. I would do like 2 sets of 3 reps for each type. 3 reps of standing vert, 3 reps of approach left right, 3 reps of approach right left. Take a break in between as needed, and then do 2 to 3 sets of that. And then finally, on the strength training side, it's just, again, very simple exercises. Do a great place to start, I think, is do like a barbell back split squat, do a Romanian deadlift, do some pull-ups, and do a shoulder press. And I think that is a perfect way to simply attack just raw force production abilities. So again, kind of tying things up now and wrapping this up, how do we maintain our speed and agility as we get older? And it starts with, number one, you got to sprint. You got to do speed training. And that's acceleration, top speed, multi-directional speed. You got to attack all of those. Number two, in your skill work, train playing at different speeds, but make sure you're touching higher speeds. Don't just go at 50% intensity the whole time, or 60 or 70%. You got to get used to going at really high speeds and doing it with a basketball so you're comfortable with that, so you can create advantages for yourself and your teammates to score. Number three, doing plyometrics. I gave the example of like pogo jumps in place, low and high. That's perfect. You just want to do activities where you are practicing jumping really quickly off the ground. As soon as you hit the ground, you jump right off. And then there's actual like basic jumping, which is just an extension of power training. You want to practice that with standing and approach jumps. And then finally, traditional strength training. Get in the weight room, lift something heavy. It doesn't need to be a 1 rep max. Maybe it's a 5 rep max, and you work on over the next couple of weeks being able to lift that heavy weight that you could only do for 5 times. Maybe you work your way up to lifting it for 8 times. And that is how I think you can maintain your speed and agility as you get older, and get faster as you get older. You don't only have to think about, I'm only going to maintain and it's going to decrease as I get older. Why not? Why can't you just get stronger? Why can't you just get faster? Why can't your tissues adapt to the stimulus you're giving to it and become stronger or more resilient or more elastic as we get older? I think that they can, and maybe that's my naivete. I think that's how you say it, right? At my age of 31. But at this stage, I say, why not? The human body will always adapt to the demands that you give it. So let's give it demands that are going to take us in the direction we want so we can be faster and more agile. So I've kind of given you like a rough template of a plan that you can follow. Go apply it. Go apply this stuff to your own training. That program that I gave you, you could do that. And that could be like 60 minutes at the most. Do that 2 or 3 times a week. You're going to be solid. You're going to be set. And hit me if you have any questions. If you have training questions, or if you want to swap ideas and talk about it, hit me up, tap in. Either shoot me a comment on this video, shoot me a DM. I'm on Instagram at Coach Logan Ryan. Or you can hit me here on YouTube. Any of those work, but no matter what, it ain't gonna work if you don't apply this. So go apply this. As always, love y'all. Peace.